from darkness towards the light. Sometimes in our life, this is how it is. We are in a state of negligence called in Irfan al-Ghafla, and we need to wake up, al-Yaqza. We need to be sharp. And sometimes when we are sitting there listening to the majalis, our minds might be with something else. If we connect every year, and this is why I advise myself first and foremost and my respected brothers and sisters, every year in Muharram, before the 1st of Muharram, we need to sit with ourselves. Because why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us stations in our year to reflect and to return back to Him. One is the holy month of Ramadan, one is Hajj, and one is Muharram and Ashura. These are all opportunities for spiritual upliftment and for whomsoever seeking close proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The idea is you sit with yourself and you think, how am I going to make myself better this Muharram, and how am I going to be different this Muharram than from last year? Because surely Imam al-Hussein did not sacrifice his life, the life of his family, the life of his companions in vain. It was not just a historical figure. Many historical events have happened in the past and they've gone. They're there for the history books. Imam al-Hussein lives on today. In the hearts of you and I, lives on today. But what is important is how I make sure that his message reflects on me. So when I start these majalis, when I begin to attend and to listen, I need to reflect with myself, sit there and think, this year I will change one thing. This year I will commit to Imam al-Hussein, or I will commit to the master of our time, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. I will say that I will do this. Sometimes, you know, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. I'm taking long enough. He says that reflect on your souls, because your soul, your heart has two conditions, iqbal and idbar. It retracts and it has an advanced stage. Remember that sometimes we put pressure on our souls, too many things. We want to change ourselves overnight altogether. We think that, oh, today I'm not praying in the right time, or I'm not waking up for Salat al-Fajr. Tomorrow I'll do everything. Our souls need training and spiritual development. Therefore, you make one commitment with yourself every year in Muharram. Oh Allah, oh this year I will do this. Because Imam al-Hussein had this, and because he sacrificed this, I have learned that to apply this in my life. And you hold to it, and you see in 10 years time where you are.
Hassan, do we have a question from the sister side?
Can you give any advice about what to say to people who say that doing certain forms of azadari, e.g. matam or zanjir, is actually self-harm, which is not allowed in Islam? This is to any speaker.
It depends which way you want to answer the question. If you want to be diplomatic or you want to be forthright. If you want to be diplomatic, you can reply back to them by saying that yes, our maraja' say that if you perform an act which causes harm to the body, then you should not perform that act. And therefore you've already shut the door on that question by giving that answer. If however you're confident enough to try and develop the argument, then what I would advise you to do is use those verses which I spoke about, the verses which speak about the idea that a prophet of God, and I don't know about you, I've seen people cry in my time, but I've never seen anyone cry as much as becoming blind. You really need to take quite a bit of self-harm till you become blind because of how much you've cried. Now, if a prophet of God, Allah mentions him in the Quran without condemning his crying. Allah doesn't say this is self-harm, you have now been stripped of your prophethood. Use that verse without a doubt, because the Imam uses that verse. Like I said again, when Sarah, the wife of Ibrahim, when she also slaps herself, that's another example of someone who slaps themselves viciously without being condemned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, the person who normally asks this question, they come from the backdrop of the idea that throughout history there hasn't been any of these examples of people performing such an act. Whereas when you show them these couple of incidents from the Quran, and you're able to show them also from the ahadith, as I mentioned to you, one of the references, when Rasulullah died, his own wives used to slap themselves viciously. Nobody came and said that when Aisha or Hafsa were doing such a thing, that this is an act which was condemned. Nor did their fathers, who were political figures at the time, condemn such an act. Even Uthman ibn Affan, when he died, his wife Naila has an interesting story. When you read her biography, Muawiyah kept on trying to marry her after Uthman died. He kept on sending proposals. He'd always get rejected by her. Until one day, she said, why do you want to marry me? He said, because when you smile, your teeth are white. So do you know what Naila did? She said, okay, very good. So she broke one of her tooth and put it in the envelope and said, if he wants to marry my teeth, let him have my teeth. Here, this isn't condemned. You find that although she was married to Uthman ibn Affan, a very renowned wife of a Khalifa of Islam, yet when she did this, she said, I will not marry anyone after Uthman. 1 year after Uthman died, Naila would keep the hair which remained from his beard and his shirt which was covered in blood. She would keep it with her, and she was known to have hit herself in memory of him. So whether you're coming to a Shia who's asking you such a thing, by showing them these verses, you are able to show that the Quran doesn't condemn showing this type of emotion. At the same time, if you want to play it diplomatically, then you could say that our Maraja have very clearly said, if you know you're causing harm to yourself, then such an act should not be performed.
Hassan, do we have a question from the brother's side? It's always the case, isn't it? Oh, yeah, you have.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Was there any sid in the tears of those of Ahl al-Kufa? Because it seems from the admonition of Ahl al-Bayt that there wasn't. But what was the status of their tears? Because one could say perhaps they cry more than us. So what's the situation there?
There was definitely sincerity in their tears. The first of them who showed a lot of sincerity in crying after Karbala was Sulaiman ibn Murad al-Khuza'i, who led the Tawabun in the revenge mission against what had happened to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Remember, sometimes when we have a scale, it's like the famous example I've given in the past about you always put Aqil next to Ali ibn Abi Talib. And so when you discuss his life, many discuss his life in a very negative way. Why? Because the barometer is his brother, isn't it? Likewise with the people of Kufa, when someone like that cries, if you put ourselves in the same position, we're not infallibles. There's always been a moment in our life where an incident has occurred which we should have done better in, which later on we regret. These people never thought that an army would be so barbaric to butcher Hussein ibn Ali. And shall I give you the biggest example of it? When Muhajir looked at Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi and said to him, Hur, if they told me who's the greatest general in Kufa, I would have said it's you. But now I look at you, you look like you're confused. Hur, from the commanders of Kufa, reaches Karbala, and here's Umar ibn Sa'ad and Shimr bin al-Jawshan saying, Hussein, you might as well get ready for hell now before you see it then. And he begins to think that, you know what, I've got to make a decision here. Because they didn't tell me we're going to butcher him. They said we're going to get a pledge of allegiance. Then we're all going to go home happily ever after. The same people of Kufa, there were some of them who sincerely thought, you know what, we're not necessarily going to help Hussein, but they're not going to kill him. When they then saw their heads being paraded, the Tawabun were for the first group, then you had a large contingent who joined Mukhtar. That contingent didn't have to join Mukhtar. Many of them could have just stayed at home and said, Ya Allah, forgive me that I didn't join Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. 18,000 soldiers joined Mukhtar and Ibrahim ibn Malik al-Ashtar when they went to avenge. And you know those soldiers? They were massacred in certain places in the most disgusting of ways. Ibn Ziyad got away with one particular battle. When he managed to catch these people on behalf of Marwan ibn al-Hakam, he butchered them. Some of these soldiers caught Umar ibn Sa'ad, they caught Shimr bin al-Jawshan, Harmala bin Kahil, they caught Khuli, they caught every single person who killed Abu Abdullah. This goes to show you that there were people whose tears were sincere. And in the same way we'd want Allah to forgive us for some of our heedlessness, likewise with them, they were heedless of what had happened to Abu Abdullah, they left him alone, but afterwards they recognized that, you know what, there's a chance that we can make up for what happened at Karbala if we catch those people who killed Abu Abdullah. And that's the slogan Mukhtar kept on using. Ya li tharat al-Hussein. Why don't you rise and avenge what happened to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? These people thought, you know what, we thought we were lost, but now there's one more chance. We didn't join Hussein at Karbala, let's join Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. Alhamdulillah, they managed to catch each and every person.
Thank you. Do we have a question from the sister's side?